The drive to be a small E entrepreneur, becoming a millennial internet marketing guru, and how Temitayo Osinubi made marketing disenchantment legendary. All right. Hey ho, let's go. Welcome to Legends and Losers, where we aspire to have authentic dialogues about what it takes to design a legendary life and a legendary business. And, sometimes we get into other incredibly important topics like how much scotch is appropriate to drink at the company party. Hello, my legendary friends. My name is Christopher Lochhead. I'm your host. And man, am I ever glad you're here. If you're new to Legends and Losers, I hope somebody warned you. And if you've been with us for a while, bless you. We have an awesome guest on today's episode. Internet marketing guru, small E entrepreneur, and the host of a fantastic podcast, a podcast I was lucky enough to be on and I have fallen in love with. The podcast is called Marketing Disenchantment. And our guest today is none other than Temitayo Osinubi. And I just like saying his name. And when you hear his voice, you'll know why, at least in part, he's got a popular podcast, because I could listen to Teme pretty much read the phone book. He's just got one of those incredible voices. And we have a conversation that is eye-opening, particularly for me, about what it really took for him to make it as a small E entrepreneur. Incredibly insightful and incredibly inspirational. And I think you're going to love it. So let me tell you a little bit about him. He's in the Atlanta area, and he's built a stellar reputation as an internet and mobile marketing guru. He's a great public speaker. You could tell because A, he's really smart, B, he's super compelling, and man, he's got that voice. And he's a podcaster of a podcast, again, called the Marketing Disenchantment Marketing Disenchanted podcast, and it's fantastic. He's a proud graduate of the School of Hard Knocks, as am I, and he has an Internet Marketing Bachelor of Science degree from Full Sail University. And now, here he is, Teme, on Legends and Losers. And if they can't come up with people, just, call them numbers. Like in Santa Cruz, the streets that go sort of, I guess, toward the ocean, I don't know how else to describe them, are numbered streets. So you have 17th Avenue and 41st Avenue and this and that and the other. And then the streets that cross them like this, they got names like of people or things or whatever,
That's
right?
a good way to do it, yeah.
Man, if you can't come up with names, just come up with fucking numbers.
Right, yeah, like how? It's not hard, people. It's not hard.
I don't know. Urban planning must be a lot harder than I make it out to be. I clearly don't understand it.
I don't think so. I think they just fucked up. I mean, come on. Like Peachtree 50 fucking times. Come on, guys.
I don't know, man. I just feel like every time I went to Atlanta, I went to Buckhead and I was on Peachtree something. Whether it was for a meeting or a dinner or whatever. That's my entire Atlanta experience. But I remember asking a cab driver once, like, is there really an Atlanta, or are you guys full of shit? Are you somebody bullshitting me here?
No, it exists. It exists.
Now, did you grow up in Atlanta, Timmy?
No, I've only been here for a couple years. I'm originally from Dayton, Ohio.
That's right.
Yeah. I graduated with my bachelor's in internet marketing from Full Sail back in 2015. And after you graduate,
so you had wait a minute. You have a bachelor's in internet marketing.
Correct.
That is so cool.
Thank you.
I wonder, when did universities start offering that as a very specific? I mean, it's one thing to have a bachelor's in marketing, but in internet marketing.
Yeah. Full Sail's program started in 2007. And there are other programs out there, but right before everything went to shit, basically, with the economy, it's right when the degree started to come out. So yeah, I graduated in 2012. And, you got 6 months to find Sallie Mae's money, and the job market in Atlanta is a lot stronger.
Wait a minute. What do you mean you got 6 months to find Sallie Mae? What does that mean?
After you graduate, you have a 6-month grace period before your student loan becomes due. And so there's other, you can defer your loan, or if you're working, you can set up payment plans. But just generally speaking, Sally Mae gives you a 6-month grace period after your graduation before your loan. You have to start making payments.
Got it. So you either have to pay it off, which I'm sure doesn't happen that often, or set up some kind of a payment program after that 6-month grace period. It's interesting. I got to ask you, as somebody who recently went through this and is now an entrepreneur, when we were talking a little bit earlier, I was sharing with you about that, Jesus, lochhead, spit it out. The Wall Street Journal story I read a little over a year ago, the crisis in American entrepreneurship, and the Brookings Institute and MIT research. And one of the things they point to is the high cost of education. And today, as millennials graduate, they have this huge burden that they have to carry. And as a result of that, they tend to want to get the highest paying job they can get as opposed to start a company, because they have this monkey they got to get off their back. And it's the biggest that it's ever been. And so how did you make the decision to be an entrepreneur, given that you were dealing with a pretty big education bill?
Right. So in my particular case, the go to school, get a job, it did work out for me somewhat, because the rule of thumb that they give you is that you should never borrow more than you plan on making your first year working. So to get my bachelor's in internet marketing cost me $57,000, and right out the gate, I came down here and I worked for Cox Media Group, and I was making 60. Well, just under 60. I was making like 29 an hour. So the numbers worked out. But with Cox Media Group, they were not as sophisticated as you would expect for such a mega conglomerate, because CMG, they own like television stations and newspapers. So those same small businesses, those doctors, lawyers, plumbers that you would expect to see on the evening news or the Sunday paper, they would just take that ad spin and put it online. And so, after when I went to CMG, I was expecting, I don't even know how to put it. I was expecting more, right? Because there's this huge company. I'm official now. I'm a corporate. I'm a real internet marketer. And they were not using a CMR at the time. They weren't using Salesforce. There was this piece of shit called Pipeline, which was really designed for sales, but it wasn't a good CMR. They were managing all our accounts in Excel. They were backloading people as quickly as they could find them, because they were just hemorrhaging money on the SEM side. And recently, they got out of SEM altogether. Now they just farm that out to agencies. They don't do that in-house anymore. So anyway, long story longer, as you would say. I'm gonna give you credit twice, but then it's mine.
Isn't that fun? Because everybody says whenever somebody says long story short, they're normally on a fucking diatribe telling you a long story, and there's nothing short about it. And so I had that aha years ago, and so I just started saying, well, long story longer, because that's what I'm doing. Right. I'm telling you a long fucking story. Anyway, long story longer.
Long story longer. I got this degree in internet marketing for me. Right. The fact that I could go and get a job if need be, hop in a cube, make 60,000. So I had money for, because with digital marketing, it doesn't take a shit ton of money, but you do need to have a budget. You do need to be able to afford a website. You need to have tools like lead pages or ClickFunnels or whatever it is that you use. And you need to be able to create images. So it doesn't take a shit ton of money, but it does take money, because this is a business. And so what led me to, the entrepreneurship side of it is I got fired from CMG, and I decided
Funny
to go.
How that was. Well, now what do I do? Exactly. I can't pay the fucking rent, so is that what happened? But why did you decide to start a company as opposed to try to go get another job like a lot of other people might?
For whatever reason, the job thing just wasn't working. It was taking a very long time to get interviews, and it's hot and cold, but I was just at that stage in my life where I knew what I knew. And so it was just time to sink or swim, which is less than desirable, by the way. Like, if you can transition easily, I definitely recommend it. I'm not one of these in both feet type of things, because you got child support. Now your woman's looking at you cross-eyed. It's just very stressful. But anyway, so we released a book, started taking on clients, and I started doing the podcast because a question that I got with some frequency was whether or not to go back to school. because I don't know if you're aware of this, but we're like in a full-blown uncollege movement. You have, because, you know, student loan debt is a problem. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say it's not a problem, because it absolutely is. But then you have, you know, some folks with some larger platforms like your Gary V's, your John Lee Dumas, actively telling people do not go to school. And so because I've actually been through a process, I can give a perspective from, you know, both sides of the coin, because I'm very frank with folks. Like, it's not right for everybody, and depending on what it is that you're trying to accomplish, maybe you just go get ClickFunnels certified, or maybe you go get leads. Like, there's a lot of there's literally 1,000 different ways you can skin this cat. And so it's more about figuring out what's right for you and how to do it. And that was a real need that I saw, because something that I saw happen that I didn't like, that I'm just as guilty of, because mind you, I graduated high school in 2002. I didn't go back to college till 2012. So I spent literally an entire decade trying to figure this shit out before going back to college. Now,
And when you say figure this shit out, what do you mean by this shit?
Entrepreneurship. I've been in every sort of network marketing. I've done wholesale real estate. Back in Dayton, I was the wholesaling chairperson for GD RIA, which I know sounds like a venereal disease, but it's not.
GD what?
GD RIA. Yeah. The acronym.
So if your doctor said, "I'm sorry, Timmy, you have GD RIA," you're like,
don't panic. Don't panic. No, the acronym RIA stands for Real Estate Investors Association. And so GD RIA stands for the Greater Dayton Real Estate Investor Association. And so I was their wholesale chairperson for like a year or so, because I had done a whopping, 5 deals. So that made me an expert. And so my mom wrote a book, and I was helping her market it. And then one of my high school friends is a local rap artist, and I was managing him. And so no kidding, like it hit me like a cartoon anvil, like doink, and your head goes to the side. Like, for all of these disparate business activities, the one thing they all had in common, besides me, was the use of the internet for advertising and marketing. And so I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to be an internet marketer anyway, I may as well get good at it. And so that's when in 2012, I went back and got my bachelor's, because up to that point, I like I said, I had been through it, and I didn't want anything to do with gurus / ninjas / mavens. Like, I'll make you the next, rock star business, just pay me $10,000 a month and it'll all be fine. And so I was kind of done with that whole scene. And so I was really refreshed when I found Full Sail's program that was actually accredited. Full Sail actually started in Dayton, Ohio, believe it or not, before they scampered on down to Winter Park, Florida. And yeah, so that's what I try to do. I try to be a resource to people.
And how long did it take you to get your, is it an undergraduate degree? Is that what it is?
Yeah, they have an undergraduate and a master's, but I got my undergraduate. It took just about 30 months. It was supposed to take 28 months, but it took me a little bit longer, because it's a fucking nightmare. There's really no other way to put it. No, because I got hustled by Shannon Doherty, right? Because there was this commercial at the time where Shannon Doherty's in her pajamas looking good. She said, "Hey, I'm going to college and I just need a laptop and you can go to school online." And I was like, well, there's a novel idea. Go to school online. Well, shit, why not? And so anyway, Full Sail's internet marketing program is online only. And it's an accelerated degree program, and they you complete a 4-year degree in about 28 months at the time. Now I think they've extended it to 30 months. And so the academic school year was only 8 months long. So they took an entire 15-week semester and condensed it down into 4 weeks. Now, if you do the math, 4 times 8, that's 32, right? 36, 32. Yeah, 4 times 8, that's 32. How they shave off those extra 4 months is that some months you have to take 2 classes instead of 1. So that's 2 15-week semesters condensed down into 4 weeks. It was hellish. It was absolutely hellish. In a couple months, I just couldn't swing it. I had to take a break. And so that's why it took me 30 months, but it's only supposed to take 28. But yeah, 4-year degree in 28 months, I don't recommend it. I wanted to kill myself a number of times. I made it somehow, but it's that the way they market it, like it's Shannon Doherty and her PJs. Oh, I'm going. All you need is a laptop. Like fuck all that. No, it's going to be the pace is neck break from the time you sign up to the time you graduate. It's deadline, deadline, deadline.
And I'm curious, what made you decide after 10 years to go back and do that? And then I guess the second question would be, was it worth it in the end?
Absolutely. So, what made me decide to go back was because being self-taught, at least this is my experience, being self-taught is an inherently reactive process, meaning that I need to learn how to do this. And so I go off and I learn how to do this. Or I need to be able to do that. And so I go off and I learn how to do that. And what ends up happening is that you end up with this hodgepodge of a skill set. And because you're chasing tactics, it tends to be light on strategy. And I found myself in situations where I really didn't know how to navigate next because I didn't have an appreciation for the landscape, if you will. When we were talking on my show, one of the things that you hit on that touched me deep is that much like yourself, I was more so worried about my skill as opposed to the game I was playing. But I didn't really have an appreciation for the game or anybody who could teach me the game because, again, I was more so trying to figure this shit out. Like, I don't know if you can tell from the lens camera, but like, I'm a big old boy. I like food, so I use a lot of food analogies. And so sort of on Food Network, you have a lot of competition cooking shows, right? And sort of the gold standard for all of these competition cooking shows is Iron Chef. And in Iron Chef, they take all of these weird, exotic ingredients that don't really go together, and they tax these master chefs with coming up with, delicacies, masterpiece dishes, to win the competition. And so, and I'm talking about you have to use like a pig head and cranberries and fucking stale bread, some bullshit that just doesn't go together. And like, oh, there's your basket, make it work, right? And so I felt like that was the situation I found myself in. But unlike the judges, where it didn't matter what you put in front of a judge, they knew how to judge it because they had a rubric, right? They knew what a finished dish looked like. So irrespective of what you actually put in front of them, they knew how to look for presentation. They knew how to look for proportion. They knew how to look for these certain elements that on the other side of the fence, I just didn't have. So I could throw some shit in a pot and hope it tasted good. But if you said, oh, like, okay, now present your dish, I didn't know what the fuck I didn't know, you know what I'm saying? And so for me, it had to do with a sense of completion, a sense of, instead of just, I felt like I was always chasing my tail. And I needed to know, like, okay, here's what a finished business plan looks like. Here's how you evaluate a website. Here's how you do this. Because, like, take what I do for now, for example. I'm a strategist, right? So I'm a content marketing strategist, and I can land on a website, and within 90 seconds, I know that I'm looking for, okay, this is above the fold. Does he have an opt-in form? What does this funnel look like? After you go to the funnel does this, blah, blah, blah. I have certain technical things that I'm looking for. Whereas before, to your point, I had skills, but I didn't know how to play the game.
It's so interesting that you decided to go back and round that out. It takes a very wise person. How old were you when you made that decision?
I was 28. Yeah, a full decade. It took a full decade after graduation for that to kick in. So I graduated high school in 2002. I didn't go back till 2012. So I was 28 when I went back.
That's so interesting. And, one of the main reasons, of course, that is cited in the research as to why we have a decline in entrepreneurship in America is the cost of education and how daunting that is. So can you sort of, share where your mindset was and maybe even is in terms of now you have this debt, right? Do you mind sharing how much that debt was?
To go back to Full Sail was 57,000, and I did have an associate's before I went back. So right now, I'm hovering right around the 65,000 mark in my student loan debt. But the reason
What's your interest rate? Do you know?
I have a couple different ones. I want to say my lowest one is 2%, and my highest one is 7%, if I'm not mistaken.
7%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, I'm far from a socialist, but
Yep.
we got to figure out. I mean, we got to figure out some way to make those 0%. Or, I mean, fuck.
I agree.
So,
It's a bear.
so when
But
you have this thing,
mhm.
and entrepreneurship seems like a very risky decision, obviously, because there's no guarantee of any kind of income whatsoever, and there's upfront costs and all that good stuff. And per your comment earlier, you've only got a 6-month grace period where you can go without paying any of this stuff. So how do you make the decision not to go back into the corporate world after you got fired and hang out a shingle, so to speak?
Right. So, well, to go back to the your first part of your question, was it worth it? In my case, it was, and the reason I tell you why is how many words is that? 4 words. No, 3 words. Access to capital, right? Because when you're talking about being self-taught, there's a lot of great information out there. You have Convince to Convert, you have Marketing Profs, and a few other ones. But to really not only in my experience, not only make the education stick, but as well as to network with people and really get opportunities, you have to go to conferences. Conferences are expensive and you can blow a fortune quick. Like, and I alluded to this when I had you on my show. Some of your better conferences, your MosCon, your South by Southwest, your social media marketing world, you're looking at a couple grand just to get through the door. And you got to travel, you got to eat, you got to fly out there. And so the wall I was running up against is that when I located some information, be it a ClickFunnels or lead pages or whatever, and I really wanted to take that next step, it was always behind a several $1,000 paywall. And when I started working, I worked for Lowe's Home Improvement back in Dayton, Ohio. First job on my own, had my apartment. I was a sales specialist in the millwork department. I was selling doors and windows, and I was making $11.50 an hour, $22,500 a year. Now, the poverty line is $20,000 a year, just to put that in perspective. So I was $2,500 over the poverty line. And so dropping $500 to $2,000 on a conference. Oh, and by the way, you have to fly out there and you have to find somewhere to stay and you have to figure out a way to feed yourself. That wasn't something I was able to do. And so one of the big misconceptions or one of the big pushbacks that people give you when you talk about going to school to get a degree in internet marketing is that you can find the information online for cheaper. And yeah, 10,000 is a lot less than 50. The rub is you gotta have the 10,000 up front. If you can't if you can't stroke a check liquid for $10,000, then the ClickFunnels conference or social media marketing world, that's not going to do you much good. Because I'll be the first one to admit you can find the information cheaper, but if you don't have access to capital, that's a hurdle that in my case I needed Sally Mae to get over. And without Sally Mae, I would not have been able to access that information, and I would not have been able to access the people. Because let's get the elephant on out the room since we're talking about it. In terms of content, like learning how to do the stuff, you don't have to go to college for that. You can learn that from lynda.com, YouTube, and reading $5. I'll tell you which books. You don't have to go to school to learn how to do the shit.
Internet marketing.
For internet marketing, right. For things that you don't need a license for. Like to be a doctor, yes, you need to don't go cutting on people.
It's so funny to me. I hate to interrupt you, but I just recently took, my best friend growing up, Johnny, and his wife Sherry were just here for a visit. They live in Montreal where I grew up, and they brought their sons who are 17 and 13, I think. And so I've been Uncle Chris their whole life, right? And so we went zip lining. Mm-hmm. And in the redwood forest, which is just incredibly magical. Awesome. Yeah. Anyway, when we're getting ready and they do the first, they give it like a little demo, and then they do it like a practice run where you're only a couple feet off the ground to get you comfortable and all that stuff. And then, so after the practice run, get everybody comfortable, you go to the first major platform, and it's pretty intimidating because you're, 70 feet off the ground, and you're on a platform that's about maybe at most 5 feet wide on a redwood fucking tree.
Right.
And it's like, holy fuck, it's very, you don't have to have a fear of heights to be very, have sweaty palms, right? And at that moment, one of the guides, there's two guides, one of the guides says, oh, no, just to reiterate, everybody's safe. The two of us have, we reviewed some YouTube videos this morning, and it's all going to be fine.
like that made me feel better. Like,
yeah, I don't want to go ziplining with the guys and gals who got trained on YouTube.
Right. So there are definitely categories like you said, if you're a software engineer, or that you absolutely need a degree of training. But with marketing in particular, and to your point, like, most people, it's marketing's weird, right? It's one of those things where most people, they've seen it, like you said, they've seen a commercial, they have an opinion, so they think, oh, I can do this. And so with digital marketing specific, there's only really two reasons that you go back to school, just two. The first is the association, and in particular, the alumni association. So once you become an alum of a particular institution, you're going to have access to both people and opportunities that you otherwise wouldn't get. So for example, say you want to be a Supreme Court justice, been dreaming about it since you were 8. What kind of 8-year-old dreams about being a Supreme Court justice? I have no idea, but fuck it, it's your dream. So if you want to be on the Supreme Court, going to Harvard or Yale is probably a good idea. Why? Because all of the sitting Supreme Court justices, as well as all of the former Supreme Court justices, have all come from Harvard or Yale. So not throwing any shade on
Is that right? I mean, do you mean figuratively or literally those two schools?
I'm going to say literally those two schools. All of them have come through those two schools. And so I might have to fact check. At least I know all of the sitting ones have. I'm not sure about the previous one, but all of the sitting ones have come from Harvard. So our current
Supreme Court, they come from two fucking schools. That's it.
Two schools. That's it. Harvard, Yale. That's it. If you go to any school other than Harvard or Yale, the likelihood of you getting on that bench is extremely slim. Not saying it can't happen, but it hasn't happened recently. I'll put it like that. And so take my school, for example, Full Sail, real heavy in the entertainment industry, right? So if you've seen any movies from the Avengers, the Iron Man, Hunger Games, a Full Sail grad did that. Most of the shit you listen to on the radio, one of our alums produced Pharrell Williams' platinum song Happy. If you're in the video games like Call of Duty, Halo, Grand Theft Auto, our alums do that. And so if you're interested in the entertainment business, Full Sail is probably a good idea. And then you have us lowly internet marketers. We're like 2% of the student body, if that. So anyway, when I started podcasting, Carrie O'Shea Gorgone, who used to teach in the master's degree program, she runs the Marketing Profs podcast, and she had me on her show. And like, no exaggeration, you can draw a line from about 80% of my guests directly to Carrie O'Shea Gorgone. Like next week, I'm interviewing Jay Baer. I've had on Jeffrey K. Wars, Brian Fanzo, Carlos Gill, some real heavy hitters in the digital marketing circuit. And I would not have had the level of access that I had to them had not it been for my approximation to Carrie. Because let's be frank. One of the reasons I came to digital marketing in the first place was to escape name discrimination, right? Because my name, Temitayo Osinubi, I was having trouble getting hired at Lowe's, as a matter of fact. This is a true story. It took me 6 months to get hired at Lowe's because I had gone to a job fair at Sinclair Community College in Dayton, Ohio, and I interviewed for a job in the lumber department, knocked it out the park, said I was great. But the HR who was there at the community college was from the Beaver Creek Lowe's, and I wanted to work at the Dayton Mall Lowe's because I lived around the corner from the Dayton Mall at the time, so I could just walk over there. But she said she would recommend me enthusiastically to the HR at the Dayton Mall Lowe's. So I follow up the next day, go to the Dayton Mall Lowe's, said, hey, I interviewed down at Sinclair. She said she would, shoot me then. Nothing. Stonewall. Followed up a few weeks later. Nothing. Kept following up. Why I was so determined to work at Lowe's, I have no fucking idea. But
for some reason, you just became a dog with a bone on that one? Or
well, she told me I had clinched. Like, she literally told me if I wanted to go to the Beaver Creek Lowe's, she would hire me on the spot.
So you essentially thought you had a job.
Yeah, I thought I had a job.
How old were you at the time, Timmy?
I was like 19.
Yeah, and you wanted a job. You were probably excited as shit, right? I remember those feelings.
And so I go there and nothing. And it wasn't until the HR got fired and the lady who would go on to be my ex was sitting there, and she hired me on the spot. And it later came out after we started dating that the HR at the time.
Wait a minute, you started dating the HR lady?
After I left the store, but yes.
Okay, so you didn't sleep with the HR lady to get the job.
No, that didn't come to like.
So you're not writing a new book called "Sleep Your Way to the Top."
Hey, if I could, I would, but I'm not that handsome. But
well, you look pretty fucking handsome to me, there, buddy.
Well, thank you. But long story short, long story longer, rather. It wasn't until the HR got fired that I finally got hired, and she divulged to me, again, this was after a year later after we started dating, that the HR was the type that if she could not pronounce your name, she did not call you back. It did not matter what your resume said. It didn't matter how qualified you were. If your name was anything other than Chris, Tom, or Bob, you were shit out of luck. You went straight to file 13. And so that's what drove me to entrepreneurship in the first place. So I was like, man, fuck her. I can just go online and make money. I don't have to deal with this shit. But unfortunately, my name is Nigerian. And so I have some countrymen who are less than scrupulous, if you will. And so there's a lot of internet scams.
Your countrymen send me a lot of weird emails.
Yeah. There's a lot. Oh, I'm a Nigerian prince. I got an inheritance I'm willing to split for you. Just send me over your bank account information, all that other bullshit. And so, understandably so, a lot of people are wary of Nigerians online. And so I was dealing with name discrimination in the workplace, and I was also dealing with name discrimination online because you had some unscrupulous Nigerians fucking it up for everybody else.
And to me, I want to make sure I understand. Do you make a distinction between name discrimination and, for lack of a better description, color discrimination? Or is it the same? It just comes from the name, or is it actually a different thing?
I don't really make a distinction between the two. No.
So you think if you were named, Chris Smith.
Yeah. Chris Smith will get you an interview. Okay. Temitayo Osinubi will get you a raised eye. And so you can tell, you can tell roughly who they are by their names. Like if you have for lack of a better term.
Our former president for, I think, a long time in his life went by Barry.
Yeah. Because it's a lot easier.
Barack sounds,
and people get intimidated. Yeah, people get intimidated because, like I said, they I don't know. I will say this: I don't know if it's from any malice or if it's just intimidation. Because nobody wants to butcher somebody else's name. That's very uncomfortable. You don't want to do it. So I'm not going to sit here and say, okay, you're racist. But at the same time, at the end of the day, you don't get the call back. Regardless if their motives are altruistic or not, they tend to shy away from that. So a lot of my cousins, and this is Nigerians in general, when we come over to this country, we'll take white bread, forgive the term, we'll take white bread names. Like my cousin Shegun, his name is Isaac. My cousin Oflake, her name is Ruth, right? So we'll take just very easy names just to sort of get over that hump. Because
is that why you go by Timmy more than Temitayo?
Temitayo, absolutely, yeah. Because
Temitayo is so fun to say.
It's fun, but it won't get you an interview. and that's just the reality of the situation.
So is that why ultimately you become an entrepreneur?
Part of the reason, yeah. Because another thing is that let's say you get the job. you've gotten it not under false pretenses, but you've had to, edit yourself to just get over that hump, and that doesn't stop once you enter the corporate environment. Like, you are expected to act a certain way, you're expected to talk a certain way, and don't get me wrong, I wasn't going in there all super thugged out with my pants around my ankles or no shit like that. But it's like, you have to.
Do you remember?
Put on that persona.
This is a total digression, but it was American Idol. I didn't watch the show, but I remember seeing this video. Do you remember the guy that came on?
Pants on the ground. Yeah. Pants on the ground. Pants on the ground.
Looking like a fool with your pants on the ground.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that we should go check while we're talking how many hits that got.
No. That was a lesson in protecting your shit, because he didn't copyright it. He didn't have any. He just went on there and he said it, and it blew the fuck up. He didn't get a penny from it. He didn't have it on. He didn't have a YouTube.
Holy fuck! I'm just checking on YouTube. To be 10,469,000 views of Pants on the Ground.
And he didn't see a cent from it. He didn't have his YouTube channel set up. He didn't have the advertising set up. He didn't protect it in any way, shape, or form. Just if he had a YouTube channel set up, just where he was getting ad revenue, like, I want to say it's something like they pay 6 or 7 cents per 1,000 views or some shit like that. But anyway, he'd have made money just from his view count. Long story short, he'd have made at least $100,000 from that many views, and he didn't get a penny from it.
But what you're saying is, when you went on job interviews, you did not have your pants on the ground. That's what you're telling me.
That's what I'll tell you. I did not.
Neither did I, by the way. But I it's so interesting. I was unemployable. Mm-hmm. But for different reasons, but it is an interesting thing when you come to that realization, I'm kind of unemployable. Is that where you got to?
Yeah, I would say I'm still there. Like,
you still think if you applied for an internet marketing job at, I don't know, I'll pick a company, and Coca-Cola's in Atlanta, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's say Coca-Cola was, had some open positions for digital marketing jobs. Do you think you wouldn't get that job?
I'll tell you what happened. I've had several one-night stands when it comes to interviews. I'll interview, because on my resume, again, I don't put Temitayo, I put Tim, Tim, so that they think they're talking to Tim Osinubi. And my last name, a lot of people think is Japanese for whatever reason, and so they think they don't think I am who I am when they talk to me. So
they're expecting some Japanese dude to show up.
Yeah, they're expecting Tim Osinubi to be Japanese, but then I think I'm rather articulate, and I say my piece, and it's like, I've interviewed for MailChimp, I've interviewed for a bunch of companies where I was I think lead pages. I think I'd have been a very good fit. I had my first interview, and then they go into they fall off the face of the earth. They go into a black hole. I can't speak as to why, because Atlanta's competitive. It's a very competitive job market, and there's a lot of good talent out there. So I'm not going to cast any aspersions, but that's been my experience. I'll go on. I'm like the proverbial one night stand. I have one good hurrah and then never hear from them again. And
they literally don't tell you anything. They don't communicate with you. They don't.
They some do, some don't. Some fall off the face of the earth. A black hole gets them or whatever, and others will just send you that thanks but fuck you email, and we've gone in a different direction, or we went with another candidate, or blah blah blah. They never tell you why, and if you ask, they probably clam up. They just say that, oh, he was more qualified, or blah blah, or we eliminated the position, or whatever. But that's what I experienced. That's what happened to me. And so again,
was that before or after your degree, or both?
After.
So after your degree, you said one of the things about your degree was access to capital. Mm-hmm. And so you meant you couldn't get the capital to be self-educated.
Right.
And because you could pay for your degree after the fact, is that what you meant by access to capital?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. The paywalls for your conferences and your VIP coaching programs, you're looking at 10, 15 grand out of pocket. And I couldn't do that. You
couldn't swing it. And so, but interestingly enough, even with the degree, you're saying that after you got the degree, you were still a one night stand on these interviews.
Right. But this was post CMG. Like I landed CMG like 2 months after graduation. I graduated in March. I started working for Cox Media Group in May of 2015. So that was a so you know that worked out because like I said, I borrowed 56 and I was making 60. So that worked out. And I had a friend from Full Sail. I got him a job. He's still at Cox Media Group. It just wasn't a good fit for me.
And then,
So
so after Cox, did you continue looking for jobs, or did you say, "Fuck it, I'm gonna start my own digital consulting business"?
both, because again, you need dough to make bread, and like you can't make bread without dough, like plain and simple. And
I
again,
fucking love that.
so the point was always to use my job as my seed capital, if you will. So instead of going to Silicon Valley and trying to raise $1 billion, because I know how to, set up a ClickFunnels or set up a lead pages and do a funnel and do all of these things, I can run it on my own. But you're still looking, you need a couple $100 a month because you have all of these tools. You need a mic, you need a laptop, electricity, you got your hosting. So not a shit ton of money, but you do need some money to be able to run your business, especially when you start talking about a little bit of paid advertising, running some ads. And so the goal was always to use the job to fund my own thought leadership, to fund, like I'm self-published. My book is self-published. I don't have a publisher. So every time I sell a book, somebody has to pay for that, and that's me. And so I was using the job to fund. So, and I also use it as, experience, like everything I experienced, I talk about on my show, which brings more people to me, which, and blah, 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 blah. But yeah. Out the gate, it worked out, but afterwards, not as much.
And so, how you doing today? How's your business? How do you feel about where you are?
I'm on an upswing. Things have really, the podcasting has taken a while to ramp up. But like I said, I was on Jay Bear's Social Pros podcast. That got me a lot of attention. I'm going to have him on my show next week. I've had a lot of good guests that has exposed me to a lot more audiences. And so, but I'm very much so building. Like I have to go out and I have to get client, and I have to hustle, and I have to scrap and sell packages. I'm in the process of redoing my site and redoing my funnel in terms of how, my offerings and the way that I, present my books and my podcast and my course to people. But yeah, so I'm very much so, at ground level, if you will, building. But it's definitely, in terms of me personally, just in terms of how do I want to phrase this? I've been able to get into conferences and get in front of people having a show that I couldn't get in front of before. Does that make sense? Like I can go to I can go to a conference now and I can get a media pass, right? Like they'll just, oh, you have a podcast. Oh, I'd love to have you. And now I have a media pass, and all I have to do is interview somebody that I would have interviewed anyway, right, for free.
And you just saved $2,000 or whatever the thing is for the conference, right?
Exactly. And so in some conferences, they want you to volunteer to do their social media. And all that consists of is, you go there, you snap a few pictures, you set up IFTTT, and, you handle that for them, and they'll let you in. So I've definitely, just in terms of attention and exposure, since I lost the podcast, that's definitely ramped things up. But I'm definitely still building.
That's awesome. I guess my big question for you about this is, there are some people in your circumstance who could very much assume, if you will, a victim position and be righteous about it, and actually have a very valid set of circumstances to say, hey, listen, the world is kind of fucking me over here. Which it sounds like you experienced, right? Was that your experience, that the world was kind of fucking with you?
Absolutely. But the thing about that is that, desperation ain't sexy. You know what I mean? That you can only, for real, like that shit stinks.
Chicks don't dig that shit, right?
Yeah, they don't. They really don't. And you can only stay there for so long. And the opportunities, for me personally, and this is just my opinion, the opportunities outweigh the bullshit because, and this is something that me and Jay rapped about a little bit on his show. AI is where social media was 10 years ago. right? Because 10 years ago, if you just think about the landscape, MySpace was the big dog. You know, Facebook was still for college students. Social media was not the juggernaut that it is right now. And the situation we have right now is that we're producing so much data every single day. 90% of the world's data that has ever existed at any point in time, I'm talking all the way back to the papyrus scroll, all the way back to the creation of the wheel, 90% of it has been created in the last year, right? Because you have...
I got to interrupt you. We had Chris Brogan on Legends and Losers a little while ago, and he told me something that knocked me over that for whatever reason I had missed. He said that there's 1 billion hours of video that go up on YouTube every fucking day.
Yeah, absolutely. At the rate of 400 hours a minute. It's like 400 hours a minute. And that equates to 65 years per day. And that's just one content format on one platform. After you add back in all of the tweets and images and white papers and emails and all this other shit, you're literally talking about hundreds of years worth of content per second. And so with AI or artificial intelligence, that's how you deliver on the promise of one-to-one marketing at scale. Because there's so much data out there, there's no way a human being can filter it all. And let's be frank, the vast majority of it is bullshit. It's cat pictures and memes and fight videos and just dumb shit. But if you want to be able to interact with somebody one-to-one on scale, you do that via chatbot. And the thing about it is data scientists don't grow on trees. Like it's like the whole engineering things. Like as a marketer, there's a shit ton of people who brand themselves as marketers or social media or whatever. But when you're talking about artificial intelligence, data science and all that, that's a very specific skill set. And Jay, he hosted an Oracle summit, and he had 150 CMOs, and they all said that their number one problem was that they could not find the right people for their teams, given where marketing is today and where it's going. And so if you know about chatbots, if you know about AI, that is definitely where marketing is headed. I mean, it's going there right now, but that's definitely going to be the in-demand skill set. And I think that too, as best as I am able to use my platform and my bullhorn, I'm trying to get as many minorities as possible into that, because again, when you're talking about access to capital, like you can plop down a couple $1,000s and learn things. But if you don't have a couple $1,000s, the fact that it's cheaper is of no value to you. It's of no benefit because you still can't afford it. Whereas at least with Sally Mae, you have a foot in the door on something that you can use to fund your own ventures.
So that Sally Mae government program actually was a huge contributor to you being the success that you are today.
Absolutely. Yeah. Without Sally Mae, I would not have been able to access the information.
You didn't have a rich Dr. Dre isn't your uncle or something.
I don't have a rich uncle, none of that shit. Like for me to go to social media marketing world, I would have literally I had to rob somebody. Like somebody's pizza boy would have to come up short. You know what I mean? And because like you talking 5 stacks, like I ain't got that. But yeah, so for me personally, and that's what I like to tell people, because again, I don't sugarcoat the shit. I don't pussyfoot around it. Like it's a problem. Right? Yeah. Student loan debt is a problem.
Yeah, again, no shit.
The bigger problem though,
but you didn't lay down. You didn't be a victim. You didn't fuck up. You said you thought about this shit. You went through your 10-year cycle. You said, I need to go back to school. It sounds like you were very intentional about it, and you've been very intentional about it since then. Yeah. Why is that? Why didn't you just say, the world's, dealt me a poor hand and I'm gonna be a victim?
I come from a family of overachievers, and that victimhood shit just doesn't fly in my family. Like I'm not one of those guys who I'm the first person to get a degree in my family. Most people in my family have degrees, and I'm talking about doctorates and PhDs and shit. And so the question is always, well, what are you gonna do? Because I get all of this, and yes, this happened, but again, what are you going to do? And that's always the question. And because I have such high performing family members who are, like I said, I have a PhD psychologist aunt and I have a shit ton of medical doctors and all this other shit. It's like I had at some point I had to take a hard look and come to the realization that I underachieved. Like I could have done more, but I didn't. And yes, there was a lot of circumstances, but there were also opportunities that I did not take advantage of because I was one of those ones who was afraid of student loan debt. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. So I'm just not going to go. Well, it's like, okay, well, you tried not going. How's that, Dr. Phil? So how's that working for you? You know what I mean? And it wasn't working for me. And so I had to sit down. I was like, okay, do I want this or do I not want this? I want this. Well, here's what it's going to take to get this. Do I have the money? Do I not have the money? I don't have the money. How are you going to get the money? Right? So going back to that old school rich dad, poor dad, he never said, I can't afford it. His question was always, how am I going to afford this? And for me, my answer was Sally Mae. I cannot afford to go to social media marketing world or MozCon or funnel hacking lives out of pocket. I don't have the money. How am I going to afford this information? Well, if I go to school, I'll get an equivocal education. Yes, it's going to be at a premium, but I still have access, whereas before I didn't. And so at the end of the day, you always have a choice. You always have the, okay, because you can do something. It like I said, it's taken a while. Like I graduated high school in 2002. It's 2017. I graduated with my bachelor's 2 years ago, and I'm still building. So but to your point, I had to get very intentional, and I just had to put it all back on me and say, look, this is my life. It does not look how I want it to look. And I had to your previous point you made before, I had to design my what my future was going to look like.
I love it. You're an incredible inspiration.
Thank you.
Temitayo, is there anything else before we kick out of this wave?
Nah, man, that's about it. Every Tuesday, look for me on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, iHeartRadio, wherever you get fine podcasts. The Marketing Disenchanted podcast. I've had this fine gentleman right here, Christopher.
I love that you call your show Marketing Disenchanted. The grumpy old man in me loves it.
Yeah.
And can you just say to me what you say at the beginning of every one of your shows? I love it. The intro.
Rose-colored glasses are off. It's time to get real. Yet we remain hopeful still. This is the Marketing Disenchanted podcast. I'm your host, Temitayo Osinubi. Let's get to it.
I love that. It's time to get real.
Yeah, because disenchanted, I mean, that's one way to look at it as grumpy, but the other part is unvarnished truth. You know, I'm not with all of this rainbows and sunshine and fairy bullshit. Like, don't get me wrong, it's a beautiful thing. Digital, it's a beautiful thing. It can really transform everything, but make no mistake, there are charlatans out there, and it's a lot. There's a lot more moving parts than you will be led to believe. Like it's rather complex, and you have to really want it. And again, I always use the analogy of marriage or being in a relationship. Yeah, she's sexy. Yeah, she looks good. But make no mistake, if you commit to this woman, there are going to be some days where it's like, like you're not going to want to see her. It's like she spent all my money, or I hate her mother, or like there's going to be something to where it's not as flowery as Disney would have you believe. But, you know, it's worth it. So, like, warts and all, let's get to it.
Well, I can't thank you enough for sharing yourself and sharing your journey. You're a fantastic inspiration and a great millennial entrepreneur, and I have no doubt that you will go down in history as one of the great internet marketers.
Oh, I appreciate that. That means a lot coming from you. And I will say, on behalf of all millennials, thank you for not shitting on us. Like, because I caught the episode where you had 3 millennials founders on your show, and you were very fair about it. Because, like, if I can say, a lot of baby boomers, they shit on millennials like it's a sport. Like they just, and I get it, because, you know, grumpy old folks, young upstarts. And don't get me wrong, there is a definite segment that are wussified and complainers, but you've always been very fair. You've always been very balanced. And as a millennial who is used to getting dumped on by baby boomers, I can't tell you how refreshing that is.
Well, just a couple of points. One, thank you. That's very kind of you to say. Two, for the record, I'm not actually that old that I'm a baby boomer. My parents are baby boomers. I'm actually what we used to be called Gen X, so I'm 49. But that said, I would be less than candid with you, Timmy, if I didn't say there have been many times. Anybody who knows me knows that I have had plenty of moments where I have. I think that the past tense of shit is shat. So
Right.
let's just say shat on millennials. It is a fun thing for me to do. But what I've learned is I've learned a lot from millennials. I have many millennial entrepreneur friends who, sure, I have mentored to some degree, but the truth is they mentor the shit out of me.
Right.
And so, yeah, the typical millennial, I want to punch him in the face for sure.
You and me both.
Exactly. The atypical millennial. And the thing that I love about guys like you is, let's say the critics are right, that most millennials, particularly in the domain of entrepreneurship, suck. Let's just say that was true. Mm-hmm. If that was true, what a huge advantage guys and gals like you have.
Right.
Because you can stand out in a world of whiners and complainers and, all the other things that get attributed to your generation.
Yeah, I'm not with that participating trophy bullshit. Like you either win or you don't. Like I get it. I get it. But yeah. So sorry for putting you in the wrong.
I'm just fucking with you on. Yeah, but as a guy who has criticized millennials, more when the record button wasn't on than is on, but a little bit when it is on. I think it's also incredibly important to shine a light on entrepreneurs like you who are going for it, and particularly an entrepreneur like you you would have had a lot of reasons, right? You would have had a lot of reasons to fucking sit in a basement, drink beer, and feel sorry for yourself and go on fucking social assistance or do some other dumb thing with your life, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And you fucking said, no way, I'm going to design a legendary life for myself. And that's what's awesome. That's what's inspirational. And there's nothing, to me, there is nothing more inspirational than a person who says, I'm going to figure out who I am, and I'm going to proactively design my life, and I'm going to fucking go for it.
Thank you. That means a lot. And I've hit my low points. I'm not going to sit here and say it hasn't happened, but I didn't stay there, right? I couldn't stay there because, again, like I said, in my family, that shit just doesn't fly. And at the end of the day, the question is always, so what are you going to do? And there you have it.
I love it. Temitayo, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful dialogue this morning. I'm stoked to have spent this morning with you.
It's been a pleasure and an honor. Thank you so much.
I'll see you again soon, brother.
Indeed.
All right. Be legendary. as I know you will.
Thank you.
Whew. Hope you enjoyed that dialogue as much as I did. If there's 250 people in your life that you think would love this episode of Legends and Losers, why not share it with them right now? And we would love it if you check this out on legendsandlosers.com and subscribed. And we would like to thank the Marketing Disenchanted podcast with our friend and guest today, Temitayo Osinubi. HarperCollins Instant Classic, Play Bigger, How Pirates, Dreamers, and Innovators Create and Dominate Markets. Pick up a copy for the entrepreneur or the legendary pioneer in your life right now, wherever legendary books are sold. Equity Directory, connecting startups to the talent and resources they need to build a legendary business at equitydirectory.co. NetSuite, #1 in cloud ERP. Just check us out at netsuite.com. OneLifeFullyLived.org, the nonprofit helping you dream, plan, and live your best life. Check us out. We've got some amazing resources on our website. Your Seat Cushion is a flotation device, the amazing new book from our friend and multi-time guest, Dushka Zapata. Verve Coffee Roasters in Santa Cruz, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Tokyo, and always at vervecoffee.com. PursuingResults.com. They produce legendary podcasts, and this one too. Interview Valet, podcast interview marketing. If you're a thought leader, get your leading thoughts on some podcasts at interviewvalet.com. And the World Wildlife Fund or Foundation, WWF.org, because our planet and wildlife matter. We need to remind you that this oddcast is a sole property of the Legends and Losers Oddcast Network, and we would love you just a little bit extra if you shared the shit out of it. All rights do remain disturbed. In the event of a water landing, Legends and Losers may be used as an awesome flotation device, as well as Dushka's new book. This oddcast may contain forward-looking statements, backward-looking statements, and most idiotic-looking statements. We must warn you that actual results may differ materially. Listen to Tom Petty. Support diversity. Teach entrepreneurship. Don't be lame. Get out of the passing lane. And I love you, Mom and Dad. Thank you so much, Dandy Candy. And hey, Colin, this oddcast really ties the room together, doesn't it? Our deepest apologies today go out to Harvey Weinstein. Sorry, Harv, we just ran out of time for you. That's it. Be legendary, my friends, and we'll see you again soon on another episode of Legends and Losers.